All right, looks like Steve had a little bit too much fun with that one. It's time now for our Race in America segment with Ashlee Banks. Over to you, Ashlee.
Hey there. So today we'll be discussing life in Baltimore after Freddie Gray. In April 2015, 25-year-old Gray was arrested by Baltimore City Police. While being transported in a police van, he suffered many injuries. As a result, he died in a trauma hospital a week later after being in police custody. His death sparked protests all over the nation. Demonstrators were demanding justice for Gray. However, no one was ever held accountable for his death. Joining me now to continue this discussion is Sean Yoes, editor of the Afro-American newspaper in Baltimore and author of Baltimore After Freddie Gray, just released earlier this week. Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to start with, what was the driving force behind writing this book?
Well, I think mainly it was to tell the full story of what has transpired in our city since the death of Freddie Gray and the uprising, subsequent uprising. It's been 3 really difficult years in our city, not just with the uprising, but then the trial of the 6 officers connected to the death of Freddie Gray, the Department of Justice report, the gun trace task force, the death of Detective Suter, Sean Suter, the murder of Detective Sean Suter, Baltimore being named the most dangerous city in America. So what I wanted to do with this book was really, first of all, to go beyond the headlines and give insight into the people who are most affected by violence in our city. And then, even maybe more importantly, talk about the people that I interview and talk to every day who are doing really incredible work to keep our city together and not falling apart.
And I think that's one of the aspects I admired in your book. You used a lot of voices, including Marilyn Mosby and Erica Bridgeford, who we've had on Race in America several times before. So I'm interested to know, why did you decide to take that route?
Well, I mean, you can't tell the story of Baltimore without giving the authentic voices of the people. And even more broadly, if you look at the book, there's a pretty significant historical context that I go into to really give people a better understanding of our city, because you can't really understand. Baltimore is one of the most complicated, intricate cities in the United States, and the history of the city is one that's remarkable, and you can't know really where Baltimore, you can't really know Baltimore until you know that history in a more full way.
Okay, now, in your opinion, what message do you want people to get out of reading this?
I think that it's just that, you know, the story of Baltimore is an ongoing story. We are evolving just as any big city does, and even though we are faced with tremendous challenges, there are just hundreds of people that are working super hard every day to make the city a better place for everybody. Yeah.
If anything, what impact are you looking for your reader to get from this book?
Just that the story of Baltimore is the story of urban America. And a lot of the challenges that we face are being faced by other cities like Chicago and Detroit, Cleveland, Los Angeles. And in this political climate that we find ourselves in, a lot of the battles that we find ourselves fighting are going to be fought locally as opposed to nationally. So I think that that's part of the impact, but ultimately just to tell the most authentic story of Baltimore that I possibly could.
You mentioned some things in your book where we have seen this happen time and time and again, where senseless killings have taken place. You mentioned Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, and when it came to Freddie Gray, you're like, now it's our time. This is happening here, close to home. But do you see anything changing in the near future when it comes to those things?
What we have to understand is that after the uprising and after the charging and then indictment of those 6 officers, the conversation about law enforcement reform was changed forever, really, not just in Baltimore, but in the United States. The trajectory of that conversation had changed. So that's the biggest thing, this ongoing battle for law enforcement reform in our city and other cities around the United States. So that's the biggest change. We're still facing epic violence in our city. But again, there are people in place like Erica Bridgeford that you mentioned who are doing incredible work. As a matter of fact, Erica has the ceasefire crew has another ceasefire coming up in August. So that's the type of work that I really wanted to highlight in this book, Baltimore After Freddie Gray.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much. That was Sean Yoes, editor of the Afro-American newspaper in Baltimore and author of Baltimore After Freddie Gray. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's it for Race in America. Follow me on Twitter at AshleeBanks_RT. RT America continues in just a moment.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.